Number 10. Roman concession stand. Archaeologists have just discovered a concession stand at the Colosseum in Rome, and in a strange twist, it has a lot of similarities to concession stands today that you can find at any sports arena. People have wanted their snacks for thousands of years. According to archaeologists from the University of Milan, the concession stand charged at least 10 denarii, the local Roman currency back then, for a small clay cup of wine. This is now the earliest known instance of sporting fans being completely ripped off by the first tiny glass of liquid. Today it's $20 for a beer. 2,000 years ago it was 10 denarii for a cup of wine. While the archaeologists didn't say exactly what the conversion rate is with today's money, they did say the price was well beyond what an average Roman citizen would pay at their marketplace. An average Roman soldier had an annual salary of 450 denarii or less, and a pair of boots you would wear every day cost 15, so 10 for one drink was way overpriced. It's a shocking example of ancient capitalism. It also shows how the advanced Roman Empire had already mastered the art of ripping their own people off and bleeding them dry. This is according to Professor Lambrugo Federico, who also says that the excavation team uncovered the remains of warning signs forbidding spectators from bringing their own food or beverages into the Colosseum. Basically, watching gladiators fight in ancient Rome had similar rules as going to the movie theater today. Furthermore, evidence shows the concession stand was selling bags of snails and olives for 20 denarii, an even bigger ripoff than the drinks. The remains of the stand itself were found on the lower level beneath the Colosseum, close to where fans had to go to enter the stands, right so you couldn't miss it. Number 9. Dying embrace. The skeleton of a mother and her child were discovered by Chinese archaeologists after 4,000 years, locked in a final embrace. The interlocked skeletons were dug up at an early Bronze Age site that the experts have nicknamed the Pompeii of the East. But while on the outside these skeletons might look sweet and loving, the truth behind their horrible deaths is a little more disturbing. It's believed that the mother was trying to protect her child during a brutal earthquake that hit China's Qinghai province in the year 2000 BC. As of right now, experts don't know the scale of the disaster that killed these poor people. The mother and her child are only one pair of skeletons in a site littered with the dead. Their best guess is that the earthquake caused the nearby Yellow River to flood, which ended up destroying the settlement and preserving the dead in their final moments of terror. For example, the archaeologists found the woman's skeleton still peering up at the sky, knelt on the floor with her arms wrapped around her young child. Archaeologists say the kid was probably a little boy, no older than 5. It's hard to imagine just how frightening the woman must have been as the floodwaters came charging at them. She looked at the sky for help and then was dead. Number 8. Medieval palace in the garden. A local Englishman living in a small village recently discovered the unimaginable in his back garden. This happened in the small town of Wilscombe, when homeowner Charles Pole hired a crew to help with a construction project. Charles happens to be disabled, so he was having a bungalow built in his garden for himself as a quiet retreat. At 81 years old, Charles nearly had a heart attack when the builders he'd hired stumbled onto ancient wall foundations and the remains of an old floor. The ruins have been dated back to the 13th century, with archaeologists saying they were once part of a local bishop's palace. Charles had literally been living on top of a palace and had no clue. Amazingly, the palace actually shows up in historical records. Local historians had already known there was a palace somewhere nearby, but they were unsure of its exact location. The palace was likely constructed around 1256, when a royal charter gave the Bishop of Bath and Wells permission to hunt in the area. Back then, England was far more forested than it is today. The bishop then constructed a private palace for himself, kind of like an extremely luxurious hunting lodge. The palace then continued to be used by various bishops up until the 16th century, when all mention of it vanished. According to archaeologist Bob Croft with the Southwest Heritage Trust, the palace was likely abandoned and then dismantled by locals in the area to build their own houses and other buildings. By that time, it was just a shoddy ruin. Nobody even knew what it was. Then at some point, somebody built Charles' house right on top of it. Number 7. Bacon's Rebellion. At historic Jamestown in Virginia, staff with the Jamestown Rediscovery Project made a strange discovery while installing some lights in front of the memorial church. They found burn deposits just beneath the surface of the soil. They realized the deposits were evidence of either the Jamestown fort burning down in 1608, of the Confederate troops retreating in 1862, or the famous Bacon Rebellion back in 1676. The archaeologists knew they had something interesting on their hands, so they continued digging until they found a mysterious square pit filled with burned artifacts. The artifacts were confirmed to definitely be from the Bacon Rebellion that happened at the site over 345 years ago. The team called it evidence of one of the most unusual chapters in the history of Jamestown. For those unfamiliar with the rebellion, it happened on September 19, 1676. A man named Nathaniel Bacon led a siege on the historic city of Jamestown. He burned the whole place to the ground after a violent skirmish with Governor Sir William Berkeley. It was the first rebellion of its kind in the American colonies. Bacon had managed to gain support from poor farmers in the area to take out the fat cats living in Jamestown. Jamestown was rebuilt after Bacon burned it down, but until just recently, no evidence of the incident was ever found. Archaeologists now have physical proof in the form of burned pieces of the old fort that this dramatic event really did take place. Number 6. Man versus Serpent. There is nothing quite as strange as a giant human skeleton found wrapped up in an equally giant serpent skeleton. The original story of the giant and the snake goes back to 2018 when the photos appeared online. The skeleton was supposedly discovered in a Thai cave near Krabi. Somehow, the giant and the serpent got into a bit of a battle, ending with both of them dead, and the snake wrapped around the human. Even more bizarre is that the snake in the photograph has horns, suggesting it may have actually been some kind of dragon, or perhaps even a dinosaur. Giant skeletons have been discovered in different parts of the globe, but this doesn't seem to be one of those cases. But did someone actually die while battling a snake? This has actually happened. A venomous snake bit a man, and in revenge, the man bit the snake back, poisoning himself and killing the snake all at the same time. He then died from the venom. But after much investigation, this particular case was actually an art installation displayed in a Thai cave. The skeleton and the serpent are real only in the sense that they haven't been digitally manipulated. They were set up by an artist from Taiwan as part of a captivating exhibition on contemporary art. They've even remained on display inside this mysterious Thai cave for curious tourists to come peek at, but not sure why they tried to make it look so real. Number 5. Massacre Victims from the Iron Age. Archaeologists made yet another shocking discovery in Spain. This time, the discovery dates back to the Iron Age. A massacre site was found near the town of La Hoya in the Basque region. It was actually spotted by archaeologists in 1935, but not excavated until decades later. When archaeologists finally got around to digging up the mass graveyard, they were shocked to find extreme levels of brutality practically unheard of. There were 13 skeletons dumped here, none of which were buried in a proper grave. Many of the dead people had been dismembered before they were thrown into the ground, dismembered in the worst possible ways. They were missing limbs, they had their skulls smashed in, and it looked like they'd been torn apart by some kind of rampaging beast. Even though the excavations have been over for years, archaeologists still don't know what happened to the victims of the massacre. They don't even know who these people were. The only thing that's certain is that whoever the victims had been in life, someone, or some group of people, hated them enough to rip them limb from limb and then dump them in an unmarked pit. And now for number 4, but first, it's shout-out time! Want to say a big thank you to Jennifer Dimer and Damon Mountain. Thanks so much for watching and letting us be a part of your day. If you are new here, be sure to hit that subscribe button and keep on watching for more amazing discoveries. Number 4. Ancient Ceremonial Monument. An archaeological investigation in England recently led to the discovery of a huge ceremonial monument and several bizarre ancient structures. The excavations were conducted by a team with Albion Archaeology after an evaluation suggested there could be evidence of activity stretching from Neolithic times to the Saxons. That's thousands of years. As it turned out, the evaluation was right. The earliest remains found here are of a Bronze Age monument, originally constructed 6,000 years ago. It was probably a ceremonial center where the ancients came to perform unknown rituals. To give you an idea of the timeline, the monument is at least 1,000 years older than Stonehenge. Next, researchers discovered evidence of a settlement from a much later time, during the Iron Age. The settlement contained a roundhouse and storage pits likely used for keeping seeds and grain safe over winter. But the most unexpected discovery was from the days of the Anglo-Saxons. The archaeologists found buildings and structures left behind just a few centuries ago, including an oven probably used for baking bread. But the real trouble is trying to figure out why ancient people continued returning to the site. It was used almost continuously from 6,000 years ago until just a few hundred years ago, seemingly abandoned without reason. Number 3. Psychological warfare. In 2016, while clearing land for a new shopping and hotel complex in Leicester, England, the workers stumbled across an ancient Roman site. It was a townhouse from the 2nd century AD. But it wasn't the house itself that caused archaeologists to be shocked. It was a small artifact found in the ruins. While excavating the house, a key handle was discovered with a grisly scene drawn onto it. The scene was of a barbarian being eaten alive by a lion, with 4 young barbarian children watching in horror. Archaeologists say this may be direct evidence of psychological warfare practiced by the Romans during their occupation of Britain. The thing is that lions don't live anywhere on the British Isles. The people living in Britain when the Roman soldiers showed up wouldn't have known what a lion was. But based on this small bronze artifact and the horrible scene it depicts, the Romans may have brought lions to Britain for the singular purpose of executing people. They would feed the locals, whom they saw as barbarians, to the hungry animals. 2,000 years ago, when the key handle was crafted, Britain was seen as the very edge of civilization. It was basically the very end of the world. The Britons were also considered to be the end of civilized humanity, living at the furthest extent of the universe. They would dye their bodies blue and green, they tattooed their faces, and to the Romans they acted like scary creatures. So it could be that the Romans brought lions to Britain as a type of psychological warfare to fight back against the barbarian hordes. To scare them into submission, they released packs of lions to terrorize the local villagers. Number 2. Byzantine town. Near Be'er Sheva in Israel, archaeologists recently discovered the remains of a Jewish town that dates back 1,500 years. The town itself isn't that strange, but the archaeologists also found a pair of public ritual pools known as mikvahs, which were used in Judaism for purification rituals. According to the Israel Antiquities Authority, the Jewish town was surprisingly large for how old it is. There was even a synagogue discovered facing in the direction of Jerusalem, which back then was considered the center of the world to the Jewish people. Archaeologists aren't sure what exactly happened to this mysterious town, but it appears to have been abandoned sometime after the Byzantine era in which it was built. It was abandoned at the same time that Islamist conquest spread throughout the area in the 6th century, destroying everything in their path. Even more mysterious is that a different synagogue was found a few miles east of the ruined city, built at the same time and abandoned at the same time. From what archaeologists can tell, the locals packed up and fled in a hurry, probably fleeing the bloodthirsty armies of Islam. Number 1. Ancient Visigoth coffin. Researchers investigating the Roman ruins in Los Villarricos in Spain discovered one of the best preserved Visigoth coffins ever. The coffin was made of hard stone, with intricate geometric patterns carved all across its surface. It dates back to the 6th century AD, right around the time when the legendary Visigoths, along with other Germanic tribes, invaded the territory previously held by the Roman Empire, the very empire the Visigoths had toppled just a few centuries before. The Roman ruins in which the coffin was discovered actually date back 600 years before the coffin was ever buried. It was originally an agricultural settlement, but after the Visigoths took over, they modeled the settlement to their own liking. A Roman villa was repurposed and turned into a necropolis. Where the Roman owner of the villa once welcomed guests, the Visigoths now buried their dead. Part of the villa was even turned into a Christian basilica. Unfortunately, archaeologists have been unable to determine the identity of the Visigoth buried in the coffin. They don't know if he was an important ruler, a member of the church, or just a rich guy who lived in the city. Thanks for watching! Which of these incredible archaeological discoveries is your favorite? Let me know in the comments below. And if you haven't already, be sure to hit that subscribe button and I'll see you next time.